Hey, it's Sterling K. Brown from the Hulu original series Paradise. The next chapter begins as Xavier's search for his wife takes him above ground, and what he finds will change everything. It was never just about the bunker. Tune in and discover the truth lies outside. Paradise, the official podcast, is now streaming, and stream Paradise on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
TaxAct filing software and live tax experts can help small businesses easily knock out their taxes. Actually, our experts can help you find deductions and credits for any sized business. Itty-bitty businesses, medium-sized, really big, mid-sized, small businesses, companies with 0 employees, and mom-and-pop conglomerates. Yep, our tax experts can help all of them. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Hello and welcome back to the Hibs Observer's post-match briefing after Hibs record a first win at Celtic Park since 2010. A goal from Felix Paslak in the first half from a wonderful Nicky Cadden cross. Before that, all too familiar, sickening narrative of Hibs failing to defend a cross right before either half-time or full-time saw Benjamin Nygren get an equaliser in the 45th minute going into half-time. It didn't look all that good for Hibs going into the second half, but a red card for Austin Trusty towards the end changed the narrative completely with, goodness me, who even scored the goal? Kai Andrews getting a goal from Ante Shuto's brilliant work in the box to see Hibs get the win today at Parkhead. Patrick, you can probably tell I'm struggling to sum up what on earth just happened. It certainly wasn't the narrative that I'd been following throughout the game. And that wasn't the narrative we ended up with at the end. How did you assess today's performance in Glasgow?
It's a really, really funny one. It's difficult to know where to begin because I think if there has been a criticism level at David Gray and his players this season, it has been that when it's come to big games, they haven't maybe shown up as much as they did last season. When you consider that they did beat Celtic at Easter Road last season, they went to Ibrox and beat Rangers, they beat Hearts home and away. And so far this season, all they've really had is that draw at Celtic Park earlier in the season, and I think the sort of December victory over Hearts. I'm struggling to remember if there was, another game in there. I mean, taking the European games out of the equation, and given what happened at the end of that campaign, it's easy to kind of omit them from the equation. But I think it was one of those games where, I mean, I was thinking before the game that with everything that's going on around Celtic and the kind of off-pitch things with the protests and boycotts and the whole like Kasper Schmeichel, will he keep his place in goal, will he not? I felt there was a real danger of it being a bit like the Premier Sports Cup quarter-final against Rangers at Ibrox when the home team were just in disarray. There was sort of questions being asked about Russell Martin, questions being asked of the players and their suitability, and it almost felt a little bit like in the lead-up to that game that not necessarily the sort of staff and players, but it did feel there was almost like this assumption that Hibs would just go there and get a result because they had been playing fairly well in the early part of the season, and it did look a little bit when you consider that they'd gone to Ibrox and won the previous season. The sort of logic there was that the Rangers team was not as strong, wasn't in as good a position, and the Hibs team was, so it would sort of be a fairly easy victory, and obviously it didn't transpire like that. And I think there was a danger that today would end up being a little bit like that. As you rightly point out, there was Hibs scoring and then conceding right before the break. I think their 9th goal they've conceded sort of directly before half time in all competitions this season. And then the second half there were sort of chances, but you just sort of felt it was kind of petering out a bit for Hibs, and that it would kind of wind up one of those where, I mean, we know what Celtic have been like with late winners recently. And then the Austin Trusty red card, it does change things because it's just such a bizarre thing to get sent off for. I mean, it just looks like a karate chop. It's just just one of those things. I don't know if it's heat of the moment. I don't know if the pressure's getting to the Celtic players, whether it's just one of those things, a rush of blood type thing. But I think that definitely helped Hibs. Looking at the subs that David Gray made in the aftermath of that, I was a little bit sceptical. I felt there was maybe a kind of call to put Ellie Yuan on and just really go for it. But fair play. He called the subs correctly, brings on Josh Campbell, brings on Kai Andrews, and it's a really, really nice culture finish from Andrews. I mean, only 19, first senior goal, such a big occasion. And, with the fact that it ended that sort of 16-year winless run for Hibs at Celtic Park. And I think it's probably it's a result that David Gray needed. It's a result the players needed, not just for, wanting to finish as far up the table as they can, but just that sort of narrative that there was, a feeling that, maybe they were struggling in bigger games this season. And I think, that result could have a huge impact on the finish to Hibs season. Because going away to Dundee next weekend, Dundee obviously and enjoying a little bit of a resurgence of form themselves. And, it's a tough place to go. Hibs have found it a difficult place to go in recent years. And I think they can take a lot of confidence from that result today. Like, yes, Celtic played on Thursday night. Yes, there was a red card, but you can only play what's in front of you. And, Celtic did have chances. Hibs had chances as well before Kai Andrews' winner. So, yeah, a really sort of good, sort of gritty performance. One that we've not seen too much of from Hibs this season, I think. And the sort of thing that to follow up last weekend's victory with like a hard-fought win at a difficult place to go, it must be sort of really pleasing for David Gray and the players, and I just imagine the bounce they'll get from that. Imagine HTC will be quite a buoyant place this week.
You can absolutely imagine. So no, it's exactly like you say. It's a result you can take an awful lot of confidence from, because I think no matter the situation that Celtic find themselves in a season, Celtic is an institution, and also Celtic Park as a place to go. If a team can go there and get 3 points, I mean, no matter all the wider context around it, then that's always going to be something that gives you a springboard to do something next in the season. Patrick, I don't know how much you'll agree with this, and I take your point on gritty, and there was a real determination. I think perhaps that cross aside, when it feels a sort of a strange narrative to say that the defending was good when the defending wasn't good, and that was nearly very costly. But there was a real determination, a real bravery, I thought, throughout the game at the back. I think particularly Rocky Bashiri sort of diving in a couple of those chances that Thomas Kvaranchara had. Just making sure you get there. And I think across the board, there wasn't a huge amount to speak of up until that red card came along. Okay, aside from the couple of chances towards the start, one of which eventually results in the ball going in the back of the net. But for me, there were glimmers of, we talk about deja vu a lot on here, but glimmers of the last time the two sides met at Parkhead, that it did look like Hibs were the more comfortable side to let Celtic play their game, and were slightly riding their luck at times. The big difference being that without having the possession, they were able to take one of those chances on transition and eventually score. I'm not sure. Is that something you'd agree with? Do you think there was an element? I don't want to be the person that Hibs get their first win at Celtic Park since 2010. I'm looking for the negatives, but is there an element of something being too passive there? And is that an alarm bell going into the next few games before the split?
I think the answer to that is it doesn't really matter how you get the 3 points, as long as you get the 3 points. We've seen other teams go to Celtic Park and just sort of sit back, soak up possession, you maybe have one chance, take it, and get away with all 3 points. So I think there was actually a lot to like about this performance, because I mean, even last season when Hibs were playing well and they went on that 17-game unbeaten run, even when they went to Celtic Park in the December, they got beaten 3-0, which was a kind of crazy scoreline, because Hibs could have had about 4 goals in the first 10 minutes. And it's just that, there was like a lack of composure and that sort of, maybe just a little bit of the pressure of, obviously Celtic were in a much better state than they are currently. But, as David Gray was saying pre-match, like it's always a challenge going there, always a good team. They've got good players, even despite the sort of well-documented, struggles. And I think you talk about the defence, I actually thought, bar the goal, which I think, Dan Barlaser will be buying Kai Andrews the drinks this week. Bar his sort of, I mean, he let Nygren go. It was a really, it felt like a really kind of sloppy goal to lose. Just, a simple case of just not tracking a runner. And it wasn't the first time he'd done it either, which I think was even more frustrating. Because you sort of look at that and you think either it's going to happen again and Hibs are going to pay for it, or somebody needs to see it and needs to sort of say, that can't happen again. But I mean, on the whole, if you take out the fact that Barlaser was playing in midfield, and if he sticks to his midfield duties, then he's has been a very good signing. I thought the defence played really well. I thought they stood up to most of what Celtic threw at them. We talked about that consistency that the team gets from having a settled back line. You wrote that piece on it. Jack Iredale playing really well at the back there. Rocky Bashiri, as you say. Warren O'Hora as well on the right side of that defence. I mean, you look at the players they're coming up against, and yes, Celtic have maybe had more dangerous players in those positions in recent seasons. But again, you can only play what you're up against, and you're at Celtic Park. It's a big pitch. It's we've seen Hibs teams go there before and kind of crumble in that sort of atmosphere. And so, yeah, I mean, I understand. I'm going to sound like David Gray here. I understand why you would ask the question about warning signs, but I think for a game like this, you take the positives and say, look, we went in front, we were pegged back, we scored a late winner, we built on the result from the previous weekend, we changed history in positive ways. Another David Grayism there.
That's a good one.
And you sort of take the positives of that, and then say, I mean, they'll go into HTC this week. They'll do the debrief. They'll look at the clips and they'll say, okay, this is what we could have done better. So obviously there is room for improvement, but I think it would be churlish to say, well, yes, they've ended this unbeaten run of 16 years, and yes, they won, but I think the main takeaway has to be that it's like another bullet point on David Gray's CV, which is really impressive. There's not many Hibs managers in recent years, as we know, have gone to Celtic Park and recorded a win. When you consider the other achievements he's ticked off for the club so far, it's just his second season as sort of permanent head coach, and it's easy to forget that. And it has felt a wee bit underwhelming at times this season with what Hearts are doing, and the fact that with Celtic and Rangers performing or underperforming, does feel like there's a little bit of a missed opportunity. But we've said it before, it's a crazy Scottish Premiership season. You look at some of the results yesterday, some of the games, and you just think there's still quite a lot of football left to be played, and you still have no idea how things are going to pan out. There's still games to be played that could go any way. Still a lot to play for. So I think in the context of the season as a whole, this is a bright spot in that previously Hibs might have crumbled in that sort of situation where they've sort of conceded just before half-time. It would have been very easy for them to then concede shortly after half-time, and then Celtic can't to a 3 or 4-1 victory. We've seen that time and time again. So to avoid that, to sort of just stick to the game plan, to react when Celtic got the man sent off, and to pick a team, to pick a lineup, and to pick subs that all contributed to what was essentially it's a very good day at the office. I mean, we talked a lot about the starting options, and neither of us said that Boyle and Elding should be the starting pair. I was sort of rooting for Ante Shuto to start. You were rooting for Dane Scarlett to start. And in the end, it's Shuto off the bench. It's two substitutes combining for the winner. And again, another David Grayism: the team that starts is never the team that finishes. He says that a lot. We don't always see evidence of it sort of playing out in games, but I think so many positives to take from that. Shuto coming off the bench, that's 3 goal contributions in 4 games. Kai Andrews getting his first senior goal. Hibs scoring late on again. When you consider, think back to the winner against Dundee United, and then to score, I think it was 87th minute for Kai Andrews. Felix Paslak as well. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for him because he scored his first goal for the club. It's a really well taken header. It's a wonderful cross from Nicky Cann, but he takes his header really well, and it's so similar to that same move against St Mirren when Paslak ended up hitting the upright. And the shine's kind of been taken off that because of Kai Andrews' win. I'm sure Paslak won't mind in the grand scheme of things, but it's promising to see another January signing or 2 January signings contributing in such a fashion. Paslak with the first goal, Andrews with the second goal, Shuto's setting up the winner. Elding scoring last week. We've had Dane Scarlett playing well. I'm probably missing out a January signing. Garananga obviously is, what price him to score a goal next week. I think there's cautious optimism, maybe. You don't want this just to be a one-off result. You want to be able to build on it and not sort of get carried away. And I think that's the important thing. Like, enjoy the victory, enjoy what I would say is a statement win, enjoy that changing history in positive ways, but it counts for very little if you can't then follow it up with 3 points at Dundee next weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, at the end of the day, as we've discussed on the podcast before, I mean, it's 2 wins on the bounce. And that's not been something that Hibs have been able to take for granted so far this season. There has been real inconsistency in turning good results like this one into something, or taking, let's say, I mean, against a struggling St Mirren, 3 points is maybe what Hibs would expect going into a game at home. I mean, it probably is exactly what Hibs would expect, but there was never a guarantee that you were then going to turn that into another 3 points. And it does feel similar to the turn of the year. And I mean, admittedly, it didn't really transpire, but there does feel like a basis to go on and put some wins together and actually start racking some good points up on the board. But we will have to see what transpires at Dens Park next week. Thank you very much, as ever. So I'm finding my throat still a little bit sore from asking Martin Boyle very politely to pass the ball in the first half to give Hibs a second. So I'm gonna sign off and have some Lemsip or similar. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Other brands are available.
Other brands are available. We are not sponsored. Thanks for a third time for joining us here on the Hibs Observer for this post-match briefing after Hibs once again defeated Celtic 2-1 at Celtic Park. Thank you for joining us. Please do follow us on social media. Do subscribe to stay informed for the next time we go live, which will likely be on Wednesday with our flagship podcast to look ahead to that, what's becoming an important game at Dens Park as Hibs travel to Dundee to face Stephen Presley's side. So we will look forward to hopefully seeing you then, and take care. Enjoy the evening. See you later.